In some ways, I've homeschooled several different families, and that's because our family has grown a lot from when we first started homeschooling. So when I first started homeschooling my son when he was 5, we have added a number of children between now and then. He is 17 and entering his senior year this year. So this last school year, we had 7 in school. The youngest was kindergarten age, and then our son was a junior at that time. So this next year we'll have a first grader, and then we'll have a variety of ages up through senior. On top of that, we have our toddler, our 2-year-old now, who is very active and busy and definitely factors into our day and my planning as well, because unfortunately she isn't just ready to take care of herself all day. Well, we homeschool, so we have to figure out ways to help include her and help to keep her occupied and help to give her attention as well. So I'm going to be doing just a series of short videos with some practical tips that I think will be helpful for all homeschooling families, but that are particularly geared towards larger families. So the first tip is to look for a curriculum that works for your family, not just for one of your children. There are several group curriculum options out there, and I have used these to some degree or of success or another. I've discovered just with the age range of my kids that there's not much we can really do together that works well for everybody to do all the same thing besides our family devotional time. But I do group the kids up in different ways throughout the day, in ways that work for us depending on the subject and our kids' development and where they're at in things. So I encourage you to try to pair your kids up too, for different subjects as much as you're able. The thing that you have to be careful with is just to make sure that it's a positive experience for everyone, because you don't want it to be a positive or helpful experience for one, for example, your younger children, but to have it actually end up being a drain on your older kids because they're held back because they're kept at a level that they could be surpassing if it wasn't for trying to keep everybody together. The other thing I just want to caution you is that I think it's great to find ways for your kids to connect with each other and for them to be partnering in things and helping each other out with things. But your kids shouldn't be bearing the burden of homeschooling their siblings. As a mom of a large family, I often have people comment or ask questions about, how much the older kids must help, and, really kind of almost with the idea sometimes that the older kids raise the younger kids. And I just want to tell you that horrifies me. I am very thankful to have older kids that are wonderful and are engaged siblings. They obviously do help out in the household, just like all of our kids are expected to help out and contribute to the household in the ways that they're able. But we have chosen very deliberately not to put on them the burden or responsibility of raising their siblings. And while I do have them sometimes help their siblings in school, again, I try very consciously not to have them have to carry the weight of being teacher, because they're supposed to be kids too, and this is their school experience too. And how would you feel as a mom if you showed up or your kids showed up at public school and were expected to teach? Now, there are ways where that can be a good and helpful thing, but it just has to be thought out and it has to be planned. So I know there are some that may not appreciate this video, and I apologize. I'm not trying to step on the way you do family, but I have heard from a number of people who are grown, who have large families, that I've heard from a couple who have said they didn't want to have kids of their own when they grew up because so much of caring for their siblings was put on them as they were growing up, that they felt like they had already had their kids, and they just wanted to be free of the responsibility of that. So while I do think that you can help utilize group activities and have the older kids help the younger, and that can be a really beautiful, wonderful thing. I do think it has to be well thought out, and it can't be done just because you don't know what else to do or because you're in over your head. There are other solutions to help you to manage so that it can be a wonderful and beautiful experience for everyone. So do pair your kids up, do group activities, do find the ways that works for your family, but make sure that it's a positive situation for everyone. So in our family, what that looks like is that we do have kids that are grouped together for different subjects because they just work really well together. They're at similar levels of growth and maturity and just grasping the subjects. And so the older ones will have additional like reading or supplemental work, but we'll do the main lessons together. And then what is really helpful often is that then we can have discussions, and they're able to do discussions with their siblings too. And it doesn't have to be just all discussions with me, because as your kids, especially as they get older, part of the goal of school is to teach them how to be critically thinking through things. And so we're not just trying to get them to memorize facts, but we're trying to actually help them to know how to learn and how to critically think and come up with conclusions for themselves. And so I found that discussions are really important to that, and thinking through questions and seeing different opinions and different sides of things. And so it can be really helpful in that context to have siblings that are grouped together so that they can bounce ideas off of each other and they can learn from one another as well. Another way to do this is to have them present what they're learning to each other. So maybe they're not all learning the same thing, but there's a time where they're able to present something, and then people can ask questions and there can be kind of a discussion around it. Another key or just helpful tip that goes right along with this is that as a parent of a larger family, it can be pretty difficult sometimes to find the time to follow up with your kids at the end of the day. So you may be going from thing to thing, lesson to lesson, activity to activity. You know, you have responsibilities outside of homeschooling as well. And so by the time you get to the end of the day, you could just be done. I often am just done. I'm ready to be done. I have other stuff I want to engage. I don't want to be wearing the teacher hat anymore. But the consequence of that is that if I'm not following up with my kids, if they have some work that they're doing individually, that can be a real problem, because not only do kids need the accountability of knowing that you're going to be checking, but you need to know if they're actually grasping the material as well, and if the current homeschool situation is working for them. Because if it's working for them, it's not that they're going to always be getting all of the answers right and doing everything right, but they're going to be grasping the material, and there will be signs that they are understanding and that they're growing. And so it's really important to make the time for that, to schedule that into your day so that you can know if your kids are starting to fall behind, if they're not grasping a concept, or if the material is going to take longer than what you think. For me, this last year, I had to rearrange the way science looked for a couple of my kids, because I realized that the youngest that was in a group of students I was doing together, that it really just ended up being over their head, and I couldn't change it anymore for them. Like it just wasn't possible in that setting without it being too costly for the other ones. So I ended up having to kind of switch plans up. So it's important that you're following up so that you know what's working, so that you're creating a schedule and a system and using curriculum and material that really is going to give everybody the best possible opportunity and make it a positive experience. It takes some trial and error, and every year what our homeschool looks like is different. The only consistent grouping has been my two oldest. They have consistently done most school together ever since my daughter started. I started her a little early. And so they've been consistently doing school together, but even that's going to be changing this year as our son is going to be looking into some college classes and things like that. So things do change. So don't be afraid of that, but just use something while it works for that time. Embrace it wholeheartedly if it's working well, and pay attention so that you know if it's time to adjust. So find things that your kids can do together, plan for that, but also plan into your day time to be following up and adjusting plans as needed so that you're just in touch with where your kids are at. That's tip 1. Stay tuned because more are coming.